Good evening, everyone. I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight for this year's Black History Program. I am very excited, or we are very excited, I apologize. We are very excited to bring to you two distinguished gentlemen who has a story about their journey through the civil rights era. I want to introduce Ambassador Harold Doley. 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 I have a friend who spells his name the same way, so I do apologize. My apologies. And also I have Tom Bouyer, SP5 Tom Bouyer. We also have our former councilman, Ken Jones, who was going to do, and a girl, I am on fire right now. Just hot running around, but we do have our former councilman, Ken Jones, here to moderate what we called a Fireside Chat. So again, thank you for coming this evening, and well, welcome, and I would love to hear, and I'll turn it over to you, Councilman.
Thank you, Councilwoman Jackson.
That's William. I think it's William.
Thank you, Town Board, for having us here today for this fireside chat. We really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone in the audience, for coming. And thank you, gentlemen, for being here today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So, Mr. Bouyer, you've lived here in the unincorporated part of Greenburgh for about 53 years.
Yes.
You finally settled on Juniper Hill in 1973.
Correct. About that.
After escaping Bessemer, Alabama.
Yeah.
You came here initially in 1966 when you were 16 years old.
Correct.
And then 2 years later, you were drafted into the Vietnam War. Is that right?
Yeah, I found myself going from the streets of Birmingham and Bessemer, Alabama, to the jungles of Southeast Asia.
Okay.
Vietnam.
Yeah. Okay.
From one shock to another shock.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Combat zone.
And Mr. Doley, you've lived in incorporated Greenburgh for at least 33 years, since purchasing and restoring Madam C.J. Walker's historic mansion in Irvington. Is that right?
Yes.
Wonderful, wonderful. Did you come in 1993?
Yes, I purchased the villa in 1993.
Clarence, we need to get better microphones because it apparently do.
Right. Just needs to get it out of
Yeah,
there.
just gotta figure.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay. And how long did you live in the house?
25 years.
Wonderful, wonderful. And now you live in downtown Hartsdale.
Yes.
Excellent, excellent. So two longtime Greenburgh residents here in Town Hall this evening. Now, Ambassador, you were 13 years old in New Orleans in 1960, and your parents owned a grocery store. Is that right?
Yes.
And Mr. Bouyer, you were 13 years old in
13, 15.
Well, in Bessemer in 1963.
Yeah.
Yeah. And your father owned a shoe shine business, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So both of you were relatively middle class kids, upper middle class kids in the South, while segregation was an ongoing theme or was ongoing.
Yes, yes.
So tell me a little bit about what it was like at 13 in Bessemer, Alabama during segregation.
Well, to be honest with you, after long periods of talking among my peers and going back and forth, talking about it, we started to feel as if our dignity, our freedom had been insulted with the way we were being treated. You know, with the signs segregating us, whites only, colored here, get on the bus, you had to go to the back of the bus. These were things that were extremely hurtful, which is why we decided we needed a change.
Okay.
And we had to take a stand.
Okay. Okay. Now, I always imagine that New Orleans is a little bit different. You know, tell me what it was like for you, Ambassador.
Well, New Orleans was different, and it was not.
Okay.
In New Orleans, and I have close ties to Alabama, I had two uncles and an aunt that lived in Tuskegee.
Okay.
And on the faculty at Tuskegee. And we visited Tuskegee at least 3 times a year. But in New Orleans, you had severe segregation, and what the elders did, they tried to protect us from the system where you would not be insulted. I went every day to school in a truck that the man, I think parents paid $1, $1.25 a week. And so that we would not have to get on the bus. My father, as you mentioned, owned a grocery store. And, around us, the immediate community was African American. But when you get to the main streets, that was white. And I had to recall, unfortunately, an event that took place. My father would not go to the corner restaurant because they didn't serve African Americans other than at the window. And he would send people down. We loved oyster loaves, our family. And one Saturday night, my father stopped with us, the whole family, to get an oyster loaf. And I went in, and my brother went in. We were both very young. And he sat down in the restaurant, and the owner, who my father knew very well, hollered at him. And he hollered at my brother, and my father did not accept that. And my little brother went out and to the car and said, "Mama, Daddy is going to get into a fight." And my mother went into the restaurant and coached my father out. And but we had our own sweet retaliation because my father owning a grocery store, and a grocery store back there in the early 50s was very different from what we buy a place from where we bought groceries, where we buy them today. And my father called a strike because he had figured out the economics of the restaurant tour. He made more money off the side window than he did in his restaurant. And my father said if anybody in the neighborhood went to that side window, they would not get their checks cashed, and they could not buy on credit because in that day you went to the store all week long and you brought your check on Friday or Saturday. And in 5 months' time, that restaurant, which was very famous, closed.
Wow. Okay. Sweet retribution.
Yes.
Okay. So, Mr. Bouyer, when the Civil Rights Act of 1964 passed, how did your life change at all, if it did?
Well, it changed dramatically because, again, my friends and I, we would all discuss what was going on in the neighborhood at my father's shoe shine stand. And of course, not politics, but civil rights was all over the place. The newspaper, on TV, talked about among neighbors. So we decided among ourselves to segregate or do a sit-in at a local lunch counter. The restaurant or the department store was called McClellan's, okay? And they had a lunch counter. Now, we spent our hard-earned money there, our parents spent their monies there, but we were not allowed to eat there. So after discussion among ourselves, we secretly, not telling our parents anything about it, decided to do a sit-in at that particular restaurant. Aside from all that was going on in Birmingham, we wanted to do something in our own neighborhood.
How many of you were there?
There were about eight,
Okay.
9 of us. And it was a little bit before noon on July 7, 1964. We proceeded to go into downtown Bessemer, into the McClellan's department store. And as we went in, we saw these men standing outside. They were holding bags, and it looked as if they had baseball bats sticking out of these bags. Well, we didn't pay it much attention. We proceeded to go in, and there were only like 4 or 5 seats available at the lunch counter at the time. The rest of the guys stood at the clothing racks or the racks behind us. I, myself, and 2 or 3 others sat at the lunch counter, and she said, "Now, you all aren't supposed to be here." We didn't say anything. One of the guys, we sat there for a minute, and then finally one of the guys says, "Well, I'd like to order a cherry Coke." She says, "You can't be served here. You're not supposed to be here." And within a few minutes, we looked towards the front door. We see it looked as if there was a scuffle going on. The store manager was trying to keep these guys out. But they said, they were yelling and screaming, "You can't keep us out. You can't keep us out. We're coming in." Lo and behold, they proceeded in and came up behind us. And after a few minutes of standing there, all of a sudden they pulled the baseball bats out of the bag and proceeded to beat us. And I mean unmercifully. I myself was beaten over the head and the back, and all I can remember is crawling for daylight, trying to stay alive. But they proceeded to beat us unmercifully, and we all got out except one of my friends, Eddie Harris. He was trapped in a corner, and they practically broke every bone in his body. When we got back to my father's shoe shine stand business, which my father was very famous for, by the way, Albert White's shoe shine stand. I mean, from Birmingham to Bessemer, Brighton, he was known all over that neighborhood. But lo and behold, we looked around and we said, "Where's Eddie?" Eddie wasn't there. And we didn't know until a couple of days go by, that Eddie had been taken to a hospital. And at that time, if you were black in that part of Alabama, you didn't go out on the floor where the patients were. You went in through the basement, and they had a place for you in the basement. Lo and behold, Eddie was there, and when we finally saw him, every bone in his body was practically broken, cast over his whole body except for his face. And he didn't live very long after that, but it was to this day, it's something that's etched in my mind that hurts. It hurts. We were beaten like dogs. Worse than that. I mean, unlike dogs, but we were beaten very, very badly.
Sure.
And when my parents found out about it, of course, they were very upset because they had told me not to participate. But I wanted to take part. Martin Luther King and Ralph Abernathy, and I don't know if you've ever heard of a man by the name of James Bevel. He was the one that said that the children around Birmingham in that area were an untapped resource for, penetrating the struggles that were going on in that Birmingham area. So, after the sit-in there at that lunch counter, which attained national notoriety, I had no idea there was such a thing as the New York Times, but there was even an article in the New York Times about this particular sit-in because we were beaten so badly. I found out just a few years ago when NBC News called my house and said, "Tom Bouyer," and I said, "Yes." "John Sharp, NBC News, we'd like to interview you. This is the 50th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act being passed, and we understand you took part in this major sit-in demonstration where a lot of you were hurt, beaten very badly." And I said, "Yes, I was part of that." And the funny thing about it is when he called me, I was on the golf course up in Ossining, and I normally don't answer my phone on the golf course. But I looked at it and something said, answer it. I answered it. And he said, John Sharp, NBC News. And the guys that were with me, they said, NBC News? Right away, they thought something was wrong.
You're about to be arrested.
Yeah. Well, they didn't have any good thoughts in their head. But anyway, we did the interview. And after that, the cat got out and the mouse got out. And the only person that knew about my participating as a youth activist was my wife, Maxine. Even our own daughter here in New York, who teaches up the street there at Bailey, she was unaware that I had participated in these sit-ins and demonstrations in and around Birmingham. And when she heard about it, she said, Dad, you mean to tell me you were involved with that? You know, she insisted on having a copy of the interview from John Sharp at NBC News, and that was not a problem. But it was difficult. It was very difficult after we did that one sit-in. I still participated, but not as much as I had before. Because I can remember times when we would be crawling out of the school windows. They would try and keep us locked in school to stop us from going out there to participate. But at that time, James Bevel, he said, you know, this is an untapped resource. We need to use these kids. And I don't know if you read the history of it, but that first day after the Birmingham campaign there, almost 1,000 kids were arrested. And the famous, I hate to say he's famous, but the police commissioner at that time was Bull Connor.
Sure.
Yeah. And he gained national notoriety for the way he treated the kids with the dogs and the water hose and everything. Once he did that, it was shortly after that the Civil Rights Act was passed, and the rest is history. But we felt as if we had to do something. We had to make a change in our neighborhood. We were tired of being called boy or the N-word, or get on the bus and go to the back of the bus. It was time for us to take a stand, and that's what we did.
Wow, that's really incredible. Ambassador, you mentioned going back and forth to Tuskegee. What was it like on the college campus at that time?
Well, Tuskegee Institute, and that's basically a different geographic part of Macon County, which was separate from Tuskegee, the city.
Okay.
It was a black community, and and I actually spent a summer in a summer program at Tuskegee, and really in 1964.
Okay.
And Tuskegee was a transport area.
Right.
People, the Freedom Riders were coming through. You know, I had a good friend, my aunt's son's neighbor, Sammy L. Young, who was killed in the Greyhound bus station,
Okay.
beaten to death with a golf club, and he tried to defend himself. Across the street was the young lady. She's married to a civil rights Black Panther, actually, and she's at Emory now. You know, she's my age and older. But Seal, she married Seals.
Bobby Seale?
Bobby Seale.
Bobby Seals.
Yeah, and
Bobby Seals.
I mean, people were involved.
Yes. Yes.
At Tuskegee, they built a black grocery store, Bull's grocery store, and he developed property in and around Tuskegee. But it became a totally self-sufficient community.
Okay.
And, that's what you had to do to survive. And in a distorted way, thrive. It was tough. It was really, but the elders again tried to buttress the younger ones from it, and because they anticipated that change was on its way.
Big change was taking place at that time. Like I said, James Bevel, who was one of Martin Luther King's constituents, he was the one in our area, in the Birmingham investment area, that came up with that idea of getting the kids involved, because they didn't have to worry about going to work the next day. They didn't have to worry about losing their jobs or anything like that. So again, he felt using the kids was sort of an untapped resource that we needed to break the chains of Jim Crow. Yeah.
So in 1966, 2 years later, you were gone.
I was out of there.
Is that when you came to Greenburgh initially?
I graduated from high school in 1966. That evening, Friday evening, I got my diploma. Saturday morning, I was on the Greyhound bus headed to New York.
Wow.
I had decided at that time, or at that point, that I had had enough. I was starting to rebel. The nonviolent thing had been enough for me, especially after the beating that we took.
Isn't that interesting?
So,
the nonviolence ended in such dramatic violence.
I mean, I believed in it for a long period of time. A lot was accomplished with it. When you look at the Birmingham campaign and the nonviolence, the way they handled that situation, it brought about a tremendous change. It was shortly after that campaign, not long after that, in '64, was when the Civil Rights Act was being passed. But before that, we had the bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church. And Birmingham, there were so many bombings around Birmingham that they had given it a nickname, Bombingham. Fred Shuttlesworth, who the airport is named after now, he, I believe it was Christmas Day that his house was bombed. And shortly after, the house was leveled. Okay, this was a church portion because he was a pastor.
Right.
But it was shortly after that he and his wife were trying to, after the Civil Rights Act had been passed, they were trying to integrate an all-white school. Both he and his wife were beaten, trying to take their daughter to this all-white school.
And this is after the passage of the Civil Rights Act. Wow.
So that was one reason, because things were still happening. And, I'm noticing this from a distance. I had friends who didn't want to go to college. They were satisfied with the way things were, in terms of just staying there. They wanted to see a change, but I wanted to get out of there. I had an uncle who came home every Christmas to see his mother, my grandmother, every Christmas. And I would hear him talk about New York, New York. And he planted that seed in my head. I asked him one day, I said, Uncle Joe, in fact, some of you may know him. He owned he was a mortician here in White Plains for a long period of time, Boyer's Memorial Chapel. Okay. So I asked him, I said, Uncle Joe, would it be possible for me to come to New York and live with you? He says, well, are you sure you want to do this? I said, yeah, I got to get out of here. I want to get out of here. I want to see a change. And after talking back and forth, he says, I tell you what, if you're willing to come to New York, get a job, go to school, get your education, stay out of trouble, because he said, I've shipped many of young men back home to Alabama in a pine box. He said, if you're willing to do that, go to school, do the right thing, then you're welcome to come stay with me. So I got on the bus that next morning after I got my diploma, that Greyhound bus when it landed in New York City. I was shocked, tall buildings, and I couldn't believe it. I said, wow, this is a different world. So that's when I landed in New York, and he picked me up, drove me up to Westchester, and he's showing me around. Roy Campanella lives here. Mom's Mabley down the street here. And I'm like, oh my goodness, this is a nice neighborhood. Maybe one day I'll be able to buy a house here. So that's how it all started.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And how about you, Ambassador? How did you end up here in New York? What pulled you here?
My business, I was an investment banker at age 13. My family, we always took a month off in August and traveled. And we came to New York, and we went to the stock exchange. And that's summer. Kennedy was campaigning against Nixon. And Kennedy's father was a member of the stock exchange, and his father-in-law. And, I concluded at that age that, power rests here, and money is here. And 13 years later, I bought my seat on the stock exchange.
So what does it mean to buy a seat on the stock exchange? What do you do? Do you sit in it? Like, how does that work?
And it is very different today than it was in 73 when I bought my seat. You are a member of what is in effect a club of 1,366 members. And only members and member firms can affect trades on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. And I want to, that was defining at 13.
I'm sure.
But before that, one summer, well, it was really, I think, the fall. The president of Liberia visited New Orleans, and the consul for Liberia lived across the street from my grandmother, and I actually shook and met President Tubman of Liberia. And I wasn't 10 years old at the time, and I said, look, the policemen were in their ceremonial uniforms to greet this black man from Africa. The governor, the mayor, greeted him. And he first stopped in Atlanta, and the governor of Georgia said he was going to greet him, but he didn't. But they all came out in New Orleans. Being a port city, and Liberia has a reputation as being a flag of convenience. A lot of ships fly the Liberian flag.
Yes.
But, and at that time, I said, I like this. I like the respect, that this man is receiving. And I said, some kind of way I'm going to be involved as a diplomat. And I got my chance to do that, to represent the United States as an ambassador.
After working on the stock exchange for a number of years.
Yes. Yes. I took leave and served in Washington.
Okay.
In two different positions.
Under which administrations?
Under the Reagan administration.
Okay. And Mr. Bouyer, after you got here, you were here for what, 2 years before you got drafted into the Vietnam War?
I would say maybe about a year and a half, thereabout, close to 2 years. And I get a notice from the Alabama local board that I had been drafted. So I immediately said, well, I'm not going back to Alabama. Is it possible for me to transfer that to New York? And sure enough, I was able to do that. At the time, the local board was on Post Road in White Plains. So I was able to transfer, all of my paperwork as a draftee to that office. And from there, they shipped me to Whitehall Street in New York. From there, I went to training in South Carolina, Columbia, South Carolina. I did my training there, my jungle training, everything right there in South Carolina. And I'll never forget calling home to tell my adopted mom. She thought I was coming home, and she said, wow, so good to hear from you. I said, yeah, it's good to talk to you, but I won't be home for long. She said, why? I'm off to Vietnam. And we both started to cry. I'll never forget. I land in, close to 20 hours flight time to Tan Son Nhut Air Base in South Vietnam, and all I could hear was boom, boom, flashes going off from miles away, and I'm saying, I have no business here. What am I doing here? I'm thinking all these crazy thoughts to myself. But, I ended up being there for about 6 months, and then I ended up being medevaced from Vietnam to the 249th General Hospital in Yokohama, Japan. So I spent 2.5 months in the hospital there. Again, thought I was coming home.
What happened?
I got injured. We were working 20 hours a day, 19, 20 hours a day, and you're carrying backpack and all of this and that, because I was responsible for these men out in the jungles, wherever they were. It was my job, my duty, and my crew. I had to make sure that we got their mail to them. Whether we flew in by helicopter, we call it chopper at the time. Sometimes we would fly in and the pilot would say, it's too hot, I can't sit it down. You got to jump. So we kick the bag out the door and jump. Wow. And, we could be there for 2 days, a day, or whatever. And then they would come back and pick us up. We go back to Benoit at the time, because Johnson was in the administration at that time. I'll never forget, because they had a riot at the local jail there, and they burned the whole place down. They called it LBJ, the prisoners there. But I ended up staying there. Again, I had to go back and do another 6 months. And after that, I came home, and they shipped me to the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., and that's where I finished out my tour of duty. And again, I was so anxious to get into school and try and get an education. I enrolled in George Washington University there and started taking courses. And after which, when I finally finished, my wife and I, my wife Maxine, we kept in touch the whole time while I was in Vietnam. So she made sure that I was coming back to White Plains. But I ended up back here after doing my tour of duty, and right away, again, I got back in school. I had to work during the day, but I went to school full time at night. Yeah.
And you ended up with a career in sales, right?
I ended up with a career in sales. I first started out with Ford Motor Company. They had an office over on Westchester Avenue. I worked over there for a while. Again, while I was in school, had a boss by the name of Neil Pallou, God rest his soul. He made sure, he wanted to see my grades every marking period. How are you doing? Because they were, not only because they were paying, but I could tell he really cared about me and wanted me to get an education after I explained to him what I wanted to do. I worked there for a while, and finally they said, we're closing the office. Closing the office? We have a position for you. I think it was in Dallas or somewhere, but I didn't want to leave. My wife had a job at the local White Plains Hospital, where she eventually ended up doing 43 years. But she had been there for a long time, so I didn't want to interrupt her career, because we were talking about getting married, this and that. And now I'm laid off, no job. But at the same time, I got a part-time job at Sears in White Plains while I'm in school. I went to a headhunter, and she said, look, you've got some sales experience here, but I don't know what I can do for you. Went back the next week. She says, I got something, but I don't know if you'll fit. I said, well, what is it? She says, well, it's pharmaceutical sales. You can go for the interview, but I don't know how it's going to work out because you don't have a science-oriented background. I went for the interview, which worked out very, very well. And the person that interviewed me, he says, wow, we like your sales and marketing experience, but you don't have a science-oriented background. Would you be willing to go to our pharmaceutical school up in Syracuse? I said, sure. If I get the job. And that's how I ended up with, at the time, it was Bristol Myers. They had a headquarters, I believe, up in Syracuse, but their pharmaceutical school was there. So I went there and had a crash course in medical school, which lasted about 3 months. And people were dropping out, crying. I mean, it was tough because words were a mile long. I mean, if you go to the pharmacy now, you try to pronounce the words on your prescription, it's tough to do.
Sure.
But, I said, God, you got to help me get through this, because I came from a religious background. And to this day, I'm a firm believer in the good Lord up above. So I prayed about it and kept trying hard, and I made it. I made it through that school. I got a sales job, and I was the first African-American to be appointed to cover Yale New Haven Hospital. And they told me that my job was to get a drug called Cefadil on formulary. And I hate to say it, at that time, you went to the meeting and you found out what you had to do, and the company sent you an envelope, and there was a check inside. I didn't like the way things were being done, but that was my job. I went to the meeting, showed the chief of infectious disease, we'd like to get this drug on formulary, and we want this business. He said, no problem.
So when you say on formulary.
On formulary, that drug was an antibiotic.
Right.
Okay, and at that time, to get an antibiotic on formulary so that they could use it for major surgeries, that's good money, big money for a pharmaceutical company. Okay.
Because everybody's then using it.
What's that?
Because everybody is then using it?
Everybody, all the doctors were using it and all the various procedures, so on and so forth. So that's why Bristol was so anxious to get this particular drug on formulary at a major teaching hospital. I mean, let's face it, Yale's known all over the world.
Absolutely.
So, I did what I had to do, and I was able to get the product on formulary there at Yale. And people were shocked because, wow, an African-American did this? So we got it on formulary, and they used it, and next thing I know, I lasted for about a year, and along comes Ayers Pharmaceutical, Bouyer. The guy said, Tom Bouyer? I said, yeah. He says, I've heard a lot about you. Can we talk? Can we have lunch one day? We had lunch at Hojo's on 95 up in New Haven. I don't know if any of you know where it's 95 turns into 91. There used to be a Hojo's there on the left. He said, can you meet me for lunch? I went to lunch, and he said, I know all I need to know. I want you to come to work for me. And I stayed there for almost 25 plus years. They made it worth my while.
Okay.
I eventually worked my way into management and started doing medical conventions all over the country, from Toronto to LA, Miami, you name it. And I think my wife loves it because she got to go with me sometime, especially when we went to Los Angeles and places like that. But I'll tell anyone, people say, wow, you were really lucky. I said, no, stop it right there. I'm blessed.
Yes.
After that beating in Alabama, the jungles of Southeast Asia, I've had 3 brain procedures. So I'm not angry at anyone. People say you're not supposed to be here, and I say, yes, I am.
Yeah.
I'm truly blessed.
Living proof.
Yeah.
So the two of you have had really remarkable careers. In closing, the last question I'd like to ask you is, what is your message to young Black men who are watching this about starting a career? When I was a kid, my parents told me, you have 3 choices: doctor, lawyer, or accountant. right? No one ever said anything to me about pharmaceutical sales or the stock market or being an ambassador, like, so what is your message to young Black men looking at you now trying to start a career?
The first thing that I would have to say is make sure you get your education. Education is the key, okay? Get your education, get a job, take care of your family, do the right thing. This quick money, fast money out here, it's a joke. But the main thing is you need to get an education and treat your family right. Do the right thing. Everybody's not meant to go to college, okay? But you can get a career in a trade. A plumber, we're always going to need plumbers, electricians.
For sure.
And now, computer technologies.
Yeah.
Everybody knows how big computers are today, so I would tell them, choose a career, get your education, treat your family well, work hard. Because we didn't get to where we are without hard work. Be committed.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, Ambassador, you had an interesting story because it seemed like you had a role model that you chose as a very young person, and you were set on achieving the goal that you saw that role model achieve. Talk to us about how that plays a factor in a career choice, and how do you stick to it?
Well, a couple of nights ago, I asked my 12-year-old grandson, he's really, these kids today, they're different. They're smarter than we were by far. And I said, what will you do and study, and what will you major in and concentrate in? He said his decision was that he is going to do what he enjoys doing, because he knows he will do his best and being happy first. And I like that answer. You do have to pursue your dreams. You first have to have a dream.
Yeah, it's true.
And goals. And you can set up timetables in meeting those goals. And you have to decide what you will accomplish in life. What kind of an influencer you are going to be to others. And as lofty as you can dream, and you hit it right. Everybody can't be a STEM graduate, but if you like to work with your hands, carpentry is a skill that will ever be needed. Plumbing, electrician. I mean, all of this AI stuff cannot be accomplished without electrification,
Right.
an electrician. And you don't have to have a PhD in electronics to do and complete your life dream. It's important to be happy in life, and you will live longer. You will be a better parent. You will be a better citizen if you're happy.
Exactly.
Well, I'd like to thank you both for joining us here this evening. Your knowledge and compassion is really inspiring. And to have the two of you sit here tonight and share that with us, we couldn't think of celebrating Black History Month in the town of Greenburgh in a better way. Thank you both so much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Councilwoman.
Councilman. Mr. Bouyer, Ambassador, I have to say Doley. I have to say I can't do it right because it's Doley. I'm sorry. I'll talk to my friend about that. He has to change his name. I am speechless only because I have known you most of my life, Mr. Bouyer, and to be part of your history only because I didn't know this story. And thank you for sharing that, and thank you for sharing it with the community. Ambassador, thank you, Councilman, because I didn't understand when you met, how do you buy your seat on the stock exchange? But the fact that the two of you started your career at 13. Yeah. And it's just so many magical, so many moments that in history that it really has me just floored and just really, I'm trying not to get emotional, but it just shows, what African Americans have endured in this world. And as much as in the United States, and as much as we try to take that and erase that history, we can't. So I thank you so much. I have some proclamations for you guys. So let me try to get through them really quickly. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'll allow you to take that time and sit on the couch and read. But on behalf of the Greenburgh Town Board, I'll read the first whereas, and then I'll just go right into the resolve statement. So whereas Black History Month is an opportunity to celebrate vital contributions of African Americans in the tapestry of our nation's history. We also pay tribute to the bravery and determination of those who violently championed the causes of justice and equality. Tom Bouyer was drafted at the age of 18 to serve in the Vietnam War and achieved the rank of Specialist SP5 and now recognized a disabled veteran. He's also have given just so much of his life based on the story that we heard this evening. The Town Board of the Town of Greenburgh hereby honor Tom Bouyer for his bravery, sacrifices, contributions to the advancement of equality, and recognizing him as a true hero of the civil rights movement as we celebrate Black History Month. So thank you. I appreciate it.
And Mr. Bouyer also as well. We have the Town of Greenburgh seal, and then of course it says 2026 Black History Month, and of course it says SPF 5, Tom Bouyer, Vietnam veteran, Lisa Maria Nero, Town Clerk. Thank you so much for your service.
Ambassador. I'm just going to call you Ambassador. All right. Whereas Black History Month is an opportunity again to honor and celebrate the remarkable resilience and incredible brilliance and significant achievements of African Americans. Their contribution has not only shaped the nation's history, but also continued to propel our community into a brighter future, Now be resolved that the Town of Greenburgh, the Town Board of the Town of Greenburgh hereby honored Ambassador Harold Doley for his barrier-breaking career, his diplomatic service, his enduring dedication to economic empowerment to the African American community as we celebrate Black History Month. So we thank you.
Thank you.
And this award is simply, of course, 2026 Black History Month Harold L. Doley, Jr., and I simply put founder and CEO, and of course, Lisa Maria Nero, town clerk. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm just gonna get a picture. You can take it. Where's my-
And one more, Councilwoman.
oh, sorry.
Here, 2026, Black History Month, S. Ken Jones, Esquire, civil rights activist, Lisa Maria Nero, town clerk. Thank you so much.